Hey, EDUC 4400. This is Heather Lynn coming to you on October the 3rd to talk to you about Module 4 and the application project. I wanted to give you a quick guide so that you would have a feel for this project, and if you would like to go ahead and begin working on it, you are more than welcome to do so. So first, to access the guide, we're going to go into Module Directions. And then we're going to click on Module 4. This application project runs between October the 12th and October the 30th, so it's approximately 2.5 weeks in length. So I'm going to put this guide to the application project at the top here. This one that you're seeing on the screen is an outdated version, but when you actually start viewing, this is where this will be. Okay, so the idea of the application project is to put into practice something that you've been working on in this course. So thinking about some of the theories we've discussed, from motivation to Socratic seminar, which was what you've been doing in your discussions, to thinking about instructional strategies and how to create or foster higher order thinking skills. There are a lot of things that we've sort of talked about in theory, and this project will give you an opportunity to develop something and apply those theories to something that you're actually doing in the classroom. So I'm calling it a mini application project because we won't have quite as much time as I have in the past with my application projects. However, I've also limited the number of options that you can choose from, and I've modified the guidelines so that they'll better fit a shorter time frame. So you have 4 project ideas to choose from, and they are located in this folder called Application Project Ideas. And I'll just put them here. Internet is a bit slow today, so bear with me, please. Okay, so the guide will be here again. So here we have 4 different projects. The first one's called Create Lessons with Project-Based Learning. And this project is a project that you can do where you create lesson plans, 2 lesson plans that are project-based. So something that you have either taught before in a project-based way, or something that you are interested in developing into a project. But the idea is to design or redesign so there's a minimum of direct instruction and students are learning by doing. So the lesson plans should have all the including materials and scaffolds that they need to complete the activity. So if you do the lesson plans, you also have to include copies of any materials you would give them. So if it would be handouts, graphic organizers, any kind of materials that you would actually give them to help them do this project, that should be included with your lesson plans. Additionally, you're going to design a rubric or a summative assessment. So a rubric, if it's a project that you're going to use a rubric to grade. If you're not going to use a rubric, what other summative assessment so that you'll be able to give a grade to your students, that should also be included. And it should be tied in with your learning goals that you have set forth in your project design. Additionally, at least one of your lessons, you need to write a long paragraph that justifies your choices. So why did you use project-based learning? And why did you order and structure the lesson the way you did? How do you think students, why do you think students would benefit from this? What are some potential areas where students could become confused or need additional help? Try to anticipate how this could flow in a classroom setting. How much time would you need to really carry out this project fully? So you're going to do 2 lesson plans, but this project may take longer than two days. So try to contextualize all of those things when you talk about this in your long paragraph. And certainly you can do more than 1 paragraph. Use academic language that you would use on the EdTPA, and I would also like to see you cite the CFERT readings so that it ties back into the theories that we've been discussing in the class. Okay, so you'll see if you click on these, it pulls up Word documents that have detailed directions as well as timelines. So I'll just show you one example. So here's a project-based learning project guide. It has suggested pacing, and it also has resulting artifacts so that you know exactly what you must turn in. And I included a few resources here if those of you need a little extra help with that, but you're certainly welcome to do your own research on project-based learning and use your own resources. Creating lessons with Socratic Seminar is the second one. Socratic Seminar is a way to have students lead a thoughtful, critical discussion, sort of like what you've been doing on your discussion boards when you come up with your own discussion questions. So it's a way, again, to be less teacher-directed and more student-centered. So you're going to choose 3 lessons, and and for each, you design a lesson that implements Socratic Seminar. So you're going to have a text or material that would be appropriate for that, and then come up with questions that are used to introduce the seminar, questions that can be used to help if the discussion stagnates midway, and questions that would help end the discussion. Now, ideally, if your students are very good at seminar, you don't really have to interject these questions. They just do this, and it comes to sort of a natural conclusion. However, if you've never done this before with your students, you're going to have to scaffold them a little bit, and you're going to have to design some discussion questions. So you're going to have to interject from time to time to keep them on track and to make sure they hit some of the points that you're hoping they'll hit. Discuss how you'll create and set up discussion guidelines with your students as well. So, for instance, one rule might be look at each other, not at me. So you want to get students to really interact with one another, but not always be looking to you as a teacher for guidance or support or reinforcement. You want them to learn how to have discussion without needing your input every time or to know that it's okay. You can come up with good discussion guidelines with your students and come up with any scaffolds. Again, more supporting documents. What are you going to hand out to them? What kind of materials will they need? And then come up with a type of formative or summative assessment you'll give at the conclusion. One lesson also must have that justification that I mentioned in the first time around. If you want some good help, I recommend going to paideia.org. I can type that in very quickly and show you. A lot of schools in North Carolina at one point were Paideia schools, and Paideia is a type of Socratic seminar, and there's some great resources here about Paideia. So if you want to set yours up like a Paideia, that's just fine. There are different lesson plans you can choose from here that give you a lot of support. I highly recommend Socratic Seminar. It works at every level, but it does take scaffolding and practice. The first few times you do your seminar, your students are probably going to struggle a little bit, but you keep working at it and you'll notice they get better each time. So it's really something I really love doing with my students, and I would encourage you guys to attempt it and give it a couple of different tries before you make a decision on whether or not it works for your classroom. Okay, the third choice is motivated annotated bibliography. This is when you come up with a question related to student motivation. So, for instance, how can I foster intrinsic motivation? You're going to come up with 10 resources that give insight into the question, and then you're going to summarize that in an annotated bibliography, or you can write an 8-page research paper or some other equivalent using other media. With a bibliography of at least 6 sources. So again, this is a chance to write a paper on a topic related to motivation or come up with an annotated bibliography. Now, either way you do it, you should have at least half of your resource be real, true primary research articles. In other words, you should be able to see when you look at it that it has a research question, participants, methods, findings, all of these things that let you know they came up with their conclusions based on a research study that the authors conducted. So make sure, because it really supports whatever you write in your research as well as your annotated bibliography if you are using actual primary studies to support the topic. Again, that makes it a lot more powerful than using opinion essays, commentaries, editorials, or even literature reviews. Although you can use some of those. I just want to see lots of research supporting this bibliography or paper. Okay, the last one is a case study, and this again is related to motivation. So if you have a student or two that puzzles you in your classroom and you want to kind of research that problem, you can conduct a case study. So the first week you're going to be really spending time observing the student, thinking about what's going on. Maybe even interacting and interviewing the student's teachers or the student themselves. So you're going to collect some data, and that's part of what you're going to submit with your final product. And then you're going to generate some ideas on what might actually help better motivate them. You want to you want to have a little research to support your findings, and you want to present that either in a paper form or it could be another media. So it could be a PowerPoint, for instance. But it needs to be sufficiently detailed that we really get a sense of the problem and what the behaviors are like, what's been attempted, what's worked, what's not worked. What do you recommend based on the research for a way to address that motivation case study? Make sure you keep the student anonymous, no photos, no names, come up with a pseudonym. Just make sure you keep that student's identity protected. And if you feel like the student would not want to talk to you, then you can certainly conduct this study in a very discreet way, where you maybe make some observational notes, but maybe that student isn't even aware that you're kind of doing a little case on them. But the opportunity here is that you learn from one student something that might actually be relevant to help you when you teach all of your students. Gives you a little time to really sort of take a deep dive into an issue that's happening related to motivation, and actually spend a little time thinking about all of the different ins and outs of the problem and what could potentially help this student. So that's a case study, and there's lots of examples of case studies online, but think about it in terms of being an ill-defined problem. So again, this is sort of problem-based learning, right? And you may not have a perfect solution, but you're going to have some recommendations. Okay, so the rubric is thinking about, is this project sufficient enough to be considered a 2 to 3 week long project? What is the quality of the artifacts, and what is the quality of the exhibition? So hopping back into the folder, those are the 4 projects you can choose from, and each one has a guide. Going back into the Module 4 folder, you're going to have a few little submissions to make as you work on the project. The first one is you can find a partner if you want to for this project. You're not required to, but you may if you would like to. Just know that having a partner doesn't mean you divide the work up. It means you do double the work. So even if you've got a partner, you still do the same amount of work as you would if you were an individual. So if you're doing a case study, then each of you takes one case study. The benefit of working with a partner is you can share your resources, share your ideas, and sort of even come up with one bigger project, more lesson plans, for instance. Some people really enjoy that, but it doesn't decrease your work. You still do the same amount of work as you would if you were working individually. So just keep that in mind. So you've got some forms here. You're going to go into these forms. The first form, due October 14th, you're going to just write a quick blurb of what your application project will be. October 19th, you'll turn in your first progress report where you'll just explain what you've been working on, how it's going. October 26th, you'll turn in your second progress report. And then by Tuesday, October 30th, you will put up your final product. So each of these tabs is a link. So for instance, I can click on the title here for Progress Report 1, and it takes me to the discussion forum. And that's where I'm going to post a thread just explaining what my proposal will be. So make sure you keep up with your deadlines. I've added those deadlines in the course calendar, and I've also updated your syllabus. So you can see in the calendar, all of those deadlines are here just to kind of help make things a bit easier. So that's the application project. I'll put some more information up as I receive your questions. I hope that you find this to be a really helpful way to sort of put these ideas that you're talking about in your discussions into practice and create some lessons or or generate some new knowledge that will really help you in your teaching. Okay, that's the end of this guide. Thank you.